Hello everyone, and welcome to week 4 of English 200, 201, and 202. This week, before you begin the lecture, I encourage you to read. We have just a little bit of reading this week. You need to read the section on creative nonfiction in Serious Daring, just a couple of pages, and then also the essay by Fleur Jaeger. It's called A Possible Keats. Sorry, it says Yeats, but it's supposed to be Keats, from her book, These Possible Lives, and there's a link to the text here. If you read those, you can read them before or after, but I highly encourage you to read, especially Fleur Jaeger's piece, before you do the exercise. So this week we're going to continue with creative nonfiction. It's our last week of creative nonfiction. Next week, you guys are over halfway through the class. Way to go. Next week, we'll be moving on to fiction. So this week, we're going to be talking more in depth about creative nonfiction. You dabbled in it last week with your citizen essays, and I hope you had fun with that. It's always a really exciting exercise that my creative writing classes do. But let's talk further about what creative nonfiction is. The word essay is French. It comes from the word in French for attempt. So it's not what you like typically think when you think of an essay, right? Like you had to write them in high school and probably in college, and you had to use research to support what you said, and MLA formatting, right? Don't use that. Don't do that. Okay? I'm here to tell you you're not doing that, okay? Creative nonfiction is a creative act, and it's a fairly new genre. It's a new type of writing. It's not new, but it's newly recognized. Most essays are written in a conversational tone. They'll either be a reflection, so a mode of thinking and feeling, research, so you'll explore topics you truly want to explore without having to worry about all the citing of sources and things. And they operate on truth, right? Creative nonfiction is true. You're not making it up like you would when you're writing a fictional story. What's in a creative nonfiction essay? Personal presence and personal experience, self-discovery and exploration. Creative nonfiction uses flexibility of form and takes a literary approach. All those things you learned in the first part of this class of how to use when you wrote poetry, like alliteration and metaphor and simile, those are all very useful when you're writing creative nonfiction. And you can blur boundaries between creative nonfiction and poetry, right? You can be very lyric in the way that you think about it. So when you write a creative nonfiction essay, you're not trying to prove a thesis. You're trying to make connections between things, between ideas, and many times one must destroy what happened in order to get at the essence of an experience. So typically, you're not going to tell us the story from A to B. Always, when you're writing creative nonfiction, you always want to close on a really powerful moment. And one way that you can set up the narrative, instead of, you can do chronological, but if you write a chronological essay, you want to focus on really specific, very specific details that are filled with conflict or something important. Or you can braid and jump. You can bring together two or more disparate topics and either put spacing between sections, or just put just a symbol between each section, and you can talk about completely different things and see what they're like working up against each other. So creative nonfiction is an essay enlivened with literary craft, imagery, voice, character, setting, and scene. It tells a story, it describes a journey, and a change. Memoir, which is one of the ways we're going to be writing, it's a type of creative nonfiction, is retrieved from the writer's memory. The writer, you, will be the protagonist, the main character. And the emphasis is on story, where the purpose emerges through the events and characters. Personal essay is about something that has happened in the writer's life that gives rise to personal reflection or intellectual exploration. A personal essay can also be a reflective essay. And what we're going to be writing as our last exercise this week is a mini biography about someone else, and we'll be talking about that. Here's a quote from Dinty Moore. He's a pretty famous nonfiction writer. The personal essayist takes a topic and holds it up to the bright light, turning it this way and that, upside and down, studying every perspective, fault, and reflection in an artful attempt to perceive something fresh and significant. So what you always want to do is find something fresh and significant. All right, journal number 10. We're going to be doing 3 journals this week. It's going to be a lot of writing, so just get ready. You can do it, okay? This one's called Flood of Memory, or Getting Ready to Write Memoir. So this is kind of your warm-up. Toni Morrison likens memory to the way the Mississippi River, years after being straightened and pushed into levees by the Army Corps of Engineers, still strains at times to flood its banks and revisit the original meandering route. All water has a perfect memory and is forever trying to get back to where it was, Morrison tells us. Writers are like that, remembering where we were, what valley we ran through, what the banks were like, the light that was there, and the route back to our original place. Many times the flood of memory is derived from the memory of a single thing, a blue pitcher your aunt always kept in her window that caught the morning sunlight, or what your bedroom ceiling looked like as a child when you laid there and tried to fall asleep, or the way it felt to play in the creek as a child. Once you remember that object or feeling, let it lead you to another and another through free writing. Write for 15 minutes continuously. Clearly describe the object or place or feeling. Use sensory detail. What does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it sound like? Give us all exactly the details. Use metaphor. Use simile. Don't be afraid to take risks. Let that object connect you with another object or idea or story. You can make a list if that's what's going to get you through the 15 minutes. After you've written for your free write, spend 5 minutes thinking about what you've written. Why are these things important? What could be your purpose in writing about these things? And if something stands out, maybe that's something you might want to further write about. Speaking of further writing about, your next writing exercise is your memoir exercise. This will be a 500-word exercise. There wasn't a word count on this one, but you need to write continuously for 15 minutes. So that should be at least a page, which is at least 250 words. So consider one of the following prompts to write a memoir. You're going to write a creative nonfiction essay of at least 500 words where you answer one or more of the following questions. What are you most afraid of? What, as a child, did you totally misunderstand but now as an adult see differently? What part of your body do you obsess over as too small, too large, oddly proportioned, or totally dull? If you could change your name, what would you change it to? What would this change represent, actually or symbolically? And why do names matter? Write a creative nonfiction essay of at least 500 words where you choose a family memory so remember, you're choosing one of these things. I'm giving you lots of possibilities, okay? You don't have to write 4 different essays, just to be clear, okay? So you're going to write it, or you're going to write a creative nonfiction essay of at least 500 words where you choose a family memory that everyone seems to remember differently. Now explore. Tell us your version. Tell us how your mother remembers it, or that she refuses to remember it at all. Don't try to win the argument. Instead, explore the gap between the 2 memories. Remember, Creative nonfiction is a place to work things out. It's not a place to prove your point. It's not a place to be correct. Or write what you have forgotten. This may seem odd, but often what we've forgotten tells a story about ourselves. Maybe you used to go to summer camp and you've forgotten the details, what the cabin smelled like, what it felt like to dive into the cold lake and go under, what might be the truth about the missing gap, what can you learn by doing research and asking others, what will you never know? Or, for the last one, you can use your free writing from your last writing exercise as a jumping off point and choose one of the objects, places, or feelings that you discovered in your free write and write a creative nonfiction essay of at least 500 words about it. All right. The last thing we're going to be working on is something a little bit different. Miniatures encourage attention. That's what the creative nonfiction writer Leah Prapura said. When you look at a forest, right, you just see a forest, right? But if you look closely, you can see all the parts that make up the forest. There's the bark on the trees. There's the leaves on the branches. There's the branch systems themselves. There's the actual close-up of the leaves. When you write creative nonfiction, you need to look at the miniature details in order to really see something and understand it in a different way. One of the things that you're reading this week is Fleur Jaeger's mini biography about Keats. And it's from a whole book of mini biographies, which I highly recommend, called These Possible Lives. In it, Jaeger simply sinks our mind's eye into a rich array of details that span the entire short life of Keats. Keats was a famous poet, romantic poet. And beginning with a portrait of Keats as a young boy with a penchant for brawling. He liked to get into fights. Jaeger yokes together strings of luminous moments that create a personal picture of the poet. And it's not a nostalgic picture. It's not a picture that makes us feel, oh, he was such a great man. We really appreciate his poetry, right? He looks human in this piece. That's what we're going for. For your last journal, I'd like you to write a mini biography. I'd like you to write an essay about a famous person. It has to be someone that most of us may know. First, I'd like you to write directly about the person in a weird yet factual version, such as Fleur Jaeger's mini biographies in These Possible Lives as a model. I want you to your essay needs to be at least 500 words long, 2 pages. In it, you want to practice hyperbrevity. That is, you want to try to say things with the least possible words. You also want to use strange images excuse me, that are really sensory rich, that embody the tone you'd like to convey in your essay. Do not simply tell us the story of someone's life. I don't want to know when your person was born and the great accomplishments and when they died, okay? Instead, you're going to give us strange, compelling moments within that life that are going to give us a mood for who that person was, a feeling, okay? Try to write as weird as possible in this one. Try to get outside of your comfort zone, okay? And use metaphor, use simile, use sensory rich detail, and be very, very specific. When you're writing, you want to think of your audience when you write, and no navel gazing. That means don't just think about yourself. Give the reader a signpost at the beginning of your essay. Be as specific as possible and use small gestures. This is for when you're thinking about all of your creative writing this week. Instead of saying, my mother was disappointed, right? Tell us what she looked like when she was disappointed. Did she have a crinkle in her brow? Or did she slump her shoulders? Did she tap her foot? When writing memoir, don't tell us what happened. Show us. Do your research. And don't be a hero or a victim. And don't make the person you're writing about a hero or a victim. Everyone is human and has good and bad in them. Insight isn't on the surface. It's deep and underneath. We will feel it if you let it happen slowly. All right, last thing this week. I know it's a lot of writing, but you got this. We're almost through. Formal assignment number 4. Each week, you will be asked to spend time revising one of your writing exercises you wrote for this week. When I say revising, I mean I really want you to revise, not like 4 or 5 words, not, a little bit here, a little bit there. I want you to really revise it. You can expand it. You can switch things around. Writing exercises will be graded on how much effort you put into crafting a finished piece of writing. If you don't put a title, you will lose a point. If you don't work on changing it between your journal and what you turn in, you will lose points. The next slide, I'm going to give you some ideas on how to revise, and I'd like you to use those tips. I'm not just saying these just to, talk out loud into my computer. I hope you guys are hearing me on the other end. In fact, this week, this is the test week. If you listen to this lecture and you hear me talking right now, I would like you to send me an email that says, "Hi, Professor Dunkel. I watched the lecture this week, and I will send you an email to let you know." Okay? So those of you who send me an email, you will get 5 extra credit points on your actual formal assignment this week. Okay? So it's worth it. Shoot me an email, say hi, tell me how the class is going, and maybe if you have any questions, send them to me. Okay? I'm feeling like I'm not hearing from you guys, so I want to make sure that you're doing all right. I'm enjoying your writing so far. Finally, when you revise, make sure you check your grammar and your spelling. Also, always turn in a file that is doc or docx or PDF. I can't open the Pages files. So if you did turn in a Pages file, upload a different one so that you can get points. So things to think about: creative nonfiction when you're revising. Do you have a title? And don't just call it exactly what I called the journal topic. Be creative. It's creative writing. Have you run spell check and corrected any grammatical errors? Notice how I say that twice. It's really important. Is your revision significantly different than the exercise you wrote in your journal this week? Have you created a strong, distinctive voice? Have you remembered to fill in the details that may seem obvious to you but won't to readers? Have you avoided making yourself look unbelievably good? Are any factual claims defendable? Will anyone potentially be hurt by your writing? Do you understand how your writing connects to the larger world around you? Have you made the best use of literary methods? All right, that's it for this week, guys. I will see you online, and hopefully I will hear from all of you via email. Until next week.